It is July 29th. It's the 2-minute drill, and finally, we have some swagger in the building. Benjamin Allbright is visiting us. So we're going to talk some Drew Lock, but we're going to start with this. Players are opting out. Which one is going to have the biggest impact, Ben?
Oh, man, I wanted to go with Andre Smith, the offensive tackle, solely because we can't run that video of him running shirtless at the combine anymore. But if I'm going to be honest, I don't think that's the one. Dante Hightower, to me, is probably the biggest name, the biggest impact player on this list, at least that I have so far, of who's opted out. The Patriots, it's interesting because his impact in the opt-out is somewhat diminished by the fact that he got teammates opting out. You know, you think that would overall change that. But I think in terms of just an actual one-on-one player that really provides that impact, I'm going to go with Dante Hightower.
Yeah, I agree. Hightower is probably the number one guy, but underrated one, I think, is Marquise Goodwin with the Eagles. And not that he was going to have this massive role this year, but the Eagles tried so hard this offseason just to add some field-stretching speed, because you go back to 2017 and what made that offense click, a big part of it was Torrey Smith and rookie year Matt Collins clearing everything out for those great tight ends and intermediate range wide receivers to do their thing. So, healthy D-Jacks, they drafted Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, even Hightower. They got a bunch of speed there now. I think they'll be okay, but anytime you can have an Olympic caliber sprinter as your backup field stretching wide receiver, it would have been nice.
All right, so you guys were kind of on the right track. The right answer is Marcus Cannon. And the reason for that, Ben, you should know this, is when Cam Newton has a bad right tackle, it can look ugly. And for a guy that you have to keep healthy, you need your tackles to be solid. And so I'm not positive that Yadni Kajust is going to be the answer there, as much as I hope it is, so that we can say Yadni Kajust for the entirety of the season. But Marcus Cannon was a player that has consistently graded well for us. He's been solid in pass protection, was a key cog in protecting Tom Brady. So to me, that's actually the Patriots move that will impact this season the most. I don't think it really changes that much, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm just here for you to say Yadni Kajust over and over again. I'm going to take that clip. That's happening. Right. Is it worth it to just for that? And also, is it worth it for Joey Bosa, the mega deal he just signed? Is it worth it?
Man, he's a good enough player to earn it. I mean, if you think about him coming out and we had these concerns, would he be this double-digit sack guy? Well, he's been that in 4 out of his 5 years in the league. If he hadn't gotten injured, it would have been a perfect 5 all for it. During that time, he's been PFF's number 1 edge defender against the run. There's no debating how good Joey Bosa is relative to defensive linemen. I just think it's interesting we see the Chargers, who, they have a great secondary already, but choosing to put so much financial investment in the defensive line. We've seen the Patriots, the Dolphins last offseason. Some, feasibly smart front offices putting most of their resources in the secondary. So it was interesting to see them, devote that to Joey instead of, future Derwin James extension, things of that nature. But in terms of paying a great player, Joey definitely checks that box.
Yeah, the highest graded pass rusher of all edge defenders over the past 3 seasons. The guy is an absolute beast. Here's the reason it's not the right move, though. Has nothing to do with Joey Bosa or how much money you're paying him, which is basically the same as Jimmy Garoppolo got a couple seasons ago. The reason it's not worth it is that they don't have a quarterback. And the Chicago Bears learned the hard way. It doesn't matter how great your edge defenders are. If you have a quarterback that can't get you past, mediocrity. And that's what they've got right now in Tyrod Taylor, who's very much a mediocre quarterback, and Justin Herbert, a guy that's super, unproven. So you don't want to be Chicago Bears 2.0. No one wants to be that. It has nothing to do with Joey Bosa. He deserves every penny. But from the Chargers team perspective, I just don't think it's the right order to do things.
I think now's the opportunity to be able to do it specifically for that reason. I mean, the Chargers aren't the Bears. They don't have Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles out there trying to, in this competition. Tyrod Taylor's taken a team to the playoffs, the Bills no less, who hadn't been there in a long time. And then you've got Herbert, who, maybe he becomes the guy that they drafted to be. We'll see. But you've got no money invested in the position. You can afford to pay Joey Bosa, who, by the way, you just mentioned, number 1 edge rusher, and by the way, he's fantastic against the run too. So in a division where you're surrounded by great edge rushers, whether that's on the opposite side in Melvin Ingram, whether it's on other teams, guys like Frank Clark or Von Miller or Bradley Chubb and other teams in the division, I think you got the money to pay him while you got the quarterback on the cheap deal. Why not?
Speaking of quarterbacks on cheap deals, and if they are worth building around, time for the main event, guys. Drew Lock. Ben, one of the most knowledgeable Broncos guys out there. What are your expectations for Drew Lock specifically in 2020?
Well, get the negativity out of the way. No, Ben, you shut it. You can get all positive here in a second. Let me bring you guys back to earth to start this off. He was a guy that graded below 60 in PFF grade for 5 games. So the long answer and the short answer is we just don't know. And if you're expecting him to jump into the top 15 of NFL quarterbacks this year, I think you're crazy. So I would say 24, 25, and whether people buy into Drew Lock will have everything to do with the rest of the Broncos team playing well, performing above expectation because they have talent. But Drew Lock is going to be a mid-20s quarterback this year.
You know, I think much like your pink tank top there, Drew Lock is exceeding expectation. It sounds like it's going to be disappointing, but as soon as you see the finished product, you're like, yeah, that's a winner right there. Speaking of winner, 4-1 on the field as a starter. The lone loss, a blizzard game against Kansas City, which the only 2 people who could find their footing on the field were Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce. You go back and he lit up a playoff team, the Houston Texans, in his second start, lit up the Chargers and that vaunted defense for a half before Rich Gangarel dialed the playbook all the way back, which is probably why he's not there anymore. You know, I think anything less than, let's not get hyperbolic, 6,000 yards, 60 touchdowns this season, I think. No, I kid. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be in the mid-range of quarterbacks. They're just going to have to get chemistry with those receivers. You know, he was throwing to Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant last year. Fant came on late, but the rest of that offense was hot garbage last year. Royce Freeman was one of the top targeted guys. He might not even make the roster this year. So, you know, I think improvement will be there. I think Drew Lock can be a mid-tier quarterback in the NFL next year. I just want to see growth from him, despite all my cheerleading.
Yeah, I'm looking at this more from a fantasy perspective. And I think right now, exactly what Ben was saying about that growth, that's what we need to see. Because what we had last year just wasn't, you know, what we're looking for in terms of a fantasy-friendly QB. Had a great game against Houston, but guess what? A lot of QBs had great games against Houston last year, particularly when J.J. Watt was on the sideline. Otherwise, 4-1 record. Great in real life, wasn't giving us much fantasy production in those starts. You see his mobility. I mean, this guy can create off script. He's very athletic, but didn't really give us much of a rushing floor. I mean, to me, he's just kind of like a Baker Mayfield prospect right now. He's got the arm. We might see some upside, but ultimately, I think he's in a run-first offense. He doesn't give you the rushing floor. Drew Lock in fantasy land is absolutely a mid-20s quarterback entering 2020.
We're going to have to make a bet here, Ben. If I'm right and he's below, let's say, QB 16, I get to loan you a few tank tops for your on-air appearances this coming year.
That may reduce your audience at Pro Football Focus. I'm pretty sure I'll break out the first negative grade for a body wearing a tank top. So
I don't know. Yeah, have you seen Steve Palazzolo in a tank top?
Have you seen DJ Qualls in a tank top?
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.